Greetings! It is I, Tantus Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my expose on the history of Magic the Gathering. Today, I'm going to bring in the set Mirage. So let's just begin talking about Mirage. Mirage was released on October 7th of 1996. It was a 350 card set. It was the first set in the Mirage block. Now the thing about this set is it is the first block, I really should say this block is the first block to have the modern format that lasted until 2014. So this format of blocks of sets lasted all those years. It lasted 18 years, as this was the standard format for a block. And Mirage, of course, was the first one in this more modern block. The basic format is that there are 3 sets, all with the same storyline. So they're all linked together, 3 sets linked together. So the storyline of Mirage is it's set on the entire block is it's set on the continent of Jamura. Now Jamura is this tropical island continent of Dominia, the main land of most of Magic during this era. Now on Jamura there are 3 nations. There's the militaristic Zafurans. They're mostly red cards when they're dealing with them. The religious Femerif, which are mostly white, and then the trading group of the suq'atc Empire, who's mostly blue. And it deals with these 3 nations dealing with the evil wizard Karavak. Now Karavak has imprisoned this important wizard slash diplomat Magnara in the Amber Prison, and it's these 3 countries attempting to save him from the Amber Prison. Now all around this at the same time we revolve around the story of Teferi, how he has decided to hide his island, to basically take it out of reality for 200 years. He basically phased it out, where the ability of phasing comes from is from Teferi, and it was actually Teferi's act of doing this to protect it from the other nations of Jamura that attracted Karavak and Magnara to the continent in the first place. So the set has a distinct African feel, and this is the first set to be designed not to function alone. It's designed to work with the other 2s in the block. It effectively is supposed to be the beginner or the introduction to this block of cards, and that the other 2 sets are to expand on the rules and the universe that's being set up in this one. So it was the establishment, while the other 2 in the block, Visions, Weatherlight, expanded the rules. And this is the format that existed up until 2014. Now this set saw its first pre-release in the Pro Tour Atlanta in '96, where players were given amounts of these cards and told make a deck with it. So they were making decks without cards they had never seen from before. So cards they'd never seen, they're making decks out of it. And the unique thing about this was the first pre-release that was in more than one city. So it wasn't just in Atlanta. Atlanta was where it premiered, but pre-release activities happened in more than one city. Now this is the first set that's said to be in the Silver Age of Magic, or the Modern Age of Magic, when it was established, when the basic rules that were established, as I said, they carried on for 18 years. This was also the first set with constructed or limited play in mind. Previously, all the sets were made with more casual play as their main focus, but this one actually took into account tournament play, which again, the other ones had ignored before, that the impact of these cards on tournament play. Now this set did introduce a few things. It introduced charms, which charms were little spells that had 3 effects you could choose one of when you played it. Charms have been used a lot since they were introduced here, but effectively it's you play it, you choose one of the 3 effects, and you get it. They also introduced 2 keywords, phasing and flanking. Well, flanking is that if a creature without flanking blocks a creature with flanking, it gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So effectively, a creature with flanking would make a creature that's blocking and that does not have flanking smaller. Now phasing, it said that when a certain circumstance is met, the phasing creature leaves play. Beginning at its controller's next upkeep, it would return to play. So effectively, it would leave play under circumstance and then come back next upkeep for the controller. Now, Mirage was sold in, of course, 60-card starter decks and 15-card booster packs. The booster packs were 36 to a box, and the starter sets were 12 to a starter box. The booster packs had 11 commons, 3 uncommons, and 1 rare in them. Now, there are technically 2 different printings of this. The one printing is the one that was in the US. It's a little darker in coloration, but there is also one that has some lighter colorations that was printed in Belgium. Now there were some changes on the card's basic formatting to make it a little easier to understand and to sort of streamline into a more modern situation, and they began adding reminder text to inform people what the keyword abilities actually did. Now this set is known to have the most amount of multicolored cards until you get to Evasion next. So Evasion's when they get another large grouping of multicolored cards in comparison to all the cards. So it's considered to have 9 cycles within it. Of course, there's the charm cycles. There's a dragon cycle, where there's a 4/4 dragon of every color. There was a diamond cycle of diamonds that could tap for a certain color mana. There was a cycle of them. There was enemy hampering cycles, where there was a colored card that would hamper a certain colored enemy. There was a cycle of multicolor hampering, where 2 cards would hamper the enemy color that was the same for both of them. There were fetch lands. There was a cycle of them. There was a cycle of guild mages of every color that had special abilities. There's a cycle of course, the instant enchantments I mentioned, which are enchantments that normally you can either play them as enchantment or play them as an instant, and they get a temporary effect instead. And there was the allied color X spell. There was a cycle of them too. Now, 16 cards in the set were reprints, and 8 of them were functional reprints, meaning that they were cards that effectively did the exact same thing of older cards but had a new name. So let's talk about some of the famous cards from this set. Now we had Mystical Tutor. That allowed you to search your library for instant or sorcery, reveal it, and put it at the top of your deck. Pretty good. There was Phyrexian Dreadnought. It was a 12/12 for 1 mana. The caveat was you had to sacrifice creatures whose total power equaled 12 when it came into play, or you had to bury it. Then there was Enlightened Tutor, which allowed you to search for an artifact or enchantment, reveal it, and put it at the top card of your library. There was Lion's Eye Diamond, where you could sacrifice it, you had to discard your hand, but you got 3 mana of any color. There was Flash. Flash was an instant. You could put a creature from your hand into play. Now you'd have to bury it unless you paid its mana cost, subtracting 2 colorless from it. There's Amber Prison, which you could choose not to untap during your untap phase. Effectively what you could do with it is pay some mana, tap it, and a creature, artifact, or land would tap and remain tapped as long as Amber Prison was tapped. There was Barred Foliage. Creatures that are attacking lose flanking, and anything without flying that attacks you takes 1 damage. There's Bazaar of Wonders. When it comes to play, you exile all cards from the graveyards, and then whenever a spell is played, it gets countered if there's another spell of the same name in play or in a graveyard. There's Chaos Sphere. Creatures with flying cannot block creatures without flying, and creatures without flying can now block creatures with flying. It switches flying and non-flying. There's Cadaver's Bloom, where you can remove a card you have in your hand from the game to add 2 green or 2 black mana to your mana pool. There's of course Celestial Dawn. Any card you play is now white, any permanent you have in play is white, any land you have in play is now a plains, and any time you have a mana symbol on a casting cost of a card or on an ability of a card in play, it is now effectively white. It makes everything white. It was jokingly called the Bleach card. There's Grinning Totem. You could tap and sacrifice it, search your opponent's library for a card, and put it into play in front of you. Until your next turn, you could play it. If you don't play it by the time it's your next upkeep, it gets put into your opponent's graveyard. So effectively, you can steal a card from an opponent's deck. There's Hammer of Bogarted. Does 3 damage to target creature or player. And if it's in your graveyard, you can pay mana to return it to your hand. There was Mara, whose power and toughness was equal to the number of cards in your hand. There's Political Trickery, where you switch control of a land you control and a land opponents control. There's Tekka's Dragon, which was a flying trample rampage 4 5/5 artifact creature that counted as a dragon before they were putting types on artifact creatures. There's Jungle Patrol, which you could pay mana to put a 0/1 wood token that counts as a wall into play that you can sacrifice for 1 red mana. I like this one. I have used it, and I do still use it in some decks. There's Magnara's Tome. When it comes to play, you search for 5 cards, shuffle them, put them under Magnara's Tome face down. If any time you should lose control of Magnara's Tome, these get removed from the game. But on your turn, you can pay 2 mana, and instead of you drawing a normal card, you draw a card from under Magnara's Tome. It was pretty good. And then there's Sacred Mesa. You have to sacrifice a Pegasi to maintain it. But for 1 white, 1 colorless, you could put a 1/1 flying Pegasi token into play. So as long as you have 2 mana open, you could keep feeding this, and more mana means more Pegasi. So that's it for today. I went over the history of Mirage, the first set in the, Mirage block, and the first set representing the modern format of Magic that lasted until 2014. So this is a very heavy legacy setting, legacy format of doing things. For 18 years, this is the way that Magic built expansions. On the whole, there have been a few exceptions I'll talk about when I get to them in the history. But regardless, I also went over a few cards from this set that you might enjoy looking into. Up to you. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like this video. It shows your support for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. Please subscribe if you already haven't. Always looking for more members, more citizens. And please share this video. If you know anybody who will learn anything from it, or just enjoy it, please share it. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.